My name is Avery Collins. I'm 28 years old. And before everything fell apart, I believed betrayal would be loud. I thought it would crash into your life like a storm. Raised voices, slammed doors, something sharp enough to leave a scar you could point to. I didn't know it could arrive quietly. I didn't know it could sit across from you at breakfast, smile, and slowly replace you. 3 years ago, I met Daniel at a tech conference in a city that never quite decided what it wanted to be. Not big enough to impress, not small enough to feel like home, just convenient. Like us, I thought back then. He was easy to fall for, confident, charming in a way that didn't feel rehearsed. And I was the steady one. The one who remembered things, dates, deadlines, the exact way he took his coffee when he couldn't sleep. From the beginning, I was all in. 6 months into our relationship, he lost his job. Company downsizing. Sudden, messy. I remember the way he sat on the edge of our bed, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing like the world had quietly slipped out from under him. "I'll figure it out," he said. "You don't have to do it alone," I replied. And I meant it. For 4 months, I paid the rent. Groceries, utilities. I stayed up late helping him rewrite his resume, sitting beside him through rejection emails, cooking dinners he barely touched. And when he finally got an offer, when his face lit up again, he pulled me into a hug and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I should have listened more carefully to that sentence, because over time, it started to feel less like love and more like dependence. Then came the opportunity. A promotion, senior developer, Europe, better pay, bigger projects, a life that felt like it was finally opening. "I can't do long distance again," Daniel said, his voice tight. "Not after her." Her, Lena, his ex-girlfriend, the one he described as complicated, toxic, but always fun. I remember watching him as he said her name, the way something flickered in his eyes, quick and unguarded. I ignored it. "I'll stay," I said. No hesitation. Because I thought that's what love looked like, choosing someone, even when it cost you. Things settled after that, or at least they looked like they did. We had routines, weekend hikes, movie nights, quiet evenings where everything felt stable. But slowly, almost invisibly, something shifted. "Lena sent me this meme," he'd say, showing me his phone. Or, "She's traveling again, always doing something interesting." At first, it sounded harmless. Then the late-night texts started. The soft buzz of his phone at 2 in the morning. The way he'd tilt the screen away just slightly. The quiet typing in the dark. One night I saw it. A message. "Miss our adventures." My stomach dropped. Not violently, not dramatically. Just enough to make something inside me loosen. The next morning, I brought it up. Calm, careful, measured. "Daniel, the messages from Lena, they make me uncomfortable." He sighed, not surprised, not concerned, just annoyed. "You can't expect me to block my ex. We're still friends." The way he said it, like I was asking something unreasonable, something childish. "I'm not asking for control," I said quietly. "Just boundaries." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're overthinking it. If you trusted me, this wouldn't even be a conversation." There it was. Not reassurance, not understanding. Deflection. I stared down at my coffee as it went cold between my hands. "Friends," I repeated. He nodded. And something inside me went still. "If that's what you need," I said, my voice steady, "then be friends." No argument, no raised voice. Just that. He looked at me like he expected more, like there should have been a fight, a scene, something to confirm that I still cared enough to compete. But I didn't, because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I had given up opportunities for him, bent my life around his fears, made space for his past, while he quietly made space for someone else. And he didn't even see it. That day at work, I tried to focus. Lines of code blurred together, logic slipping through my fingers as my mind replayed the same question over and over again. When did I become the one asking for permission to be respected? By the time I got home that evening, Daniel was laughing on the couch, phone in hand. Her name lit up the screen again. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I felt distant, like I was already watching the end of something before it had officially begun. For the next few days, Daniel acted like nothing had happened. That was almost the worst part. He still asked me how my meetings went, still reached for my hand when we crossed the street, still kissed my forehead in the kitchen like affection could erase disrespect if he spread it thin enough. But his phone kept lighting up. Lena. Again and again and again. At first, it was private. Quick smiles at messages he didn't explain. A soft chuckle in the middle of dinner. A screen turned slightly away from me in bed. Then it stopped being private. One evening, I was scrolling absent-mindedly when his story came up. A beach photo. Old, sun-faded, the kind people post when they want something to be seen without admitting they want it seen. Daniel and Lena standing barefoot near the shoreline, both laughing at something outside the frame. The caption said, "Good times with old friends, #nostalgia." I read it twice. Then I looked at the comments. "You two are always so good together. Still the same chemistry, lol. Some things never die." My chest tightened, but not in the way it used to. It wasn't panic anymore. It was recognition. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't harmless. This was public. And somehow that made it cleaner. It meant I could stop wondering whether I was imagining things. That night, I sat on the couch while he showered, the television glowing soundlessly in front of me. I kept thinking about the promotion email I had archived instead of answering, the apartment in Europe I had looked at and then closed, the version of myself I had folded up neatly and put away because he said distance would ruin us. I remembered the second offer 3 months earlier. Same company, better terms, relocation support, a title I had worked years for. "But what about us?" Daniel had asked, leaning against the counter with that wounded look he wore so well. Lena always said long distance kills relationships. Even then, I had noticed it. The way her name kept appearing whenever he wanted something from me. As if his ex-girlfriend had somehow become the invisible third voice in our relationship. I had reassured him anyway. "We'll make it work here," I said. I gave up the offer. Again. Now, staring at that beach photo, I felt something cold settle into place. Not heartbreak. Accounting. A week later, things escalated. I came home earlier than usual and found him in the kitchen, leaning back against the counter, smiling into his phone in a way I hadn't seen in months. Light. Effortless. Almost boyish. When he noticed me, the smile vanished. He ended the call too quickly. "Who was that?" I asked, already knowing. "Lena," he said. Then, with a shrug, "She's going through a rough time." Of course she was. That night he asked if we could talk. There was something almost formal about the way he said it, and I knew before he opened his mouth that this conversation had been rehearsed. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. He exhaled slowly, clasped his hands together, and looked at me with an expression designed to make him seem thoughtful instead of cruel. "I've been thinking," he said. "I need some space." I said nothing. He took my silence as permission to continue. "Lena understands parts of me that you don't. That doesn't mean anything inappropriate is happening. It just means..." He hesitated, then chose the words anyway. "You and I have become very settled. Predictable." Predictable. It landed exactly where he meant it to. I looked at him and suddenly saw our entire relationship with painful clarity. Every compromise dressed up as maturity. Every time I swallowed discomfort so he could feel free. Every time I was asked to be understanding while he was allowed to be careless. "You're great, Avery," he said, and I almost laughed at the mercy in it. But this friendship with her is harmless. And honestly, if you can't handle that, maybe we're not right for each other. There it was again. Not accountability, not honesty. Just another version of "your pain is inconvenient to me." "So what are you saying?" I asked. He leaned back, relieved that I was making it easier. "I think maybe we should take a break. Just see where things go." No tears, no guilt. Just that same smooth, casual cruelty. Like he was rescheduling a meeting instead of dismantling 3 years of my life. I studied his face. He really thought he had control of this. He thought I would cry, argue, negotiate, ask what Lena had that I didn't. He thought I would do what I had always done. Stay calm, stay loyal, stay available, while he kept one foot angled toward the door. Instead, I nodded, slowly, once. "I understand," I said. His eyes flickered, confusion, then surprise. That wasn't the reaction he wanted. Maybe he wanted proof that I still loved him enough to compete. Maybe he wanted permission to drift away while keeping me emotionally parked exactly where he left me. What he got was stillness. I stood up, picked up my laptop from the coffee table, and walked to the bedroom. "Avery," he called after me. I turned slightly. "You should do what you need." Then I closed the door. That night, while he slept down the hall, I sat at my desk in the dark with only my laptop screen illuminating the room. For a long time, I didn't move. I just listened. The hum of the air conditioner, the distant traffic outside, the soft, oblivious rhythm of his breathing. Then I began. First, I opened my social media accounts. Photo after photo, vacation selfies, holiday dinners, hiking trails, lazy Sunday mornings, his hand in mine, his face against my hair, our lives arranged into neat little squares that had once looked like proof. I deleted them all. Not dramatically, not angrily, methodically. Each click felt less like destruction and more like inventory being corrected. When I was done, there was no trace of us left. Then I opened my email. The subject line was still there, flagged and waiting. Final offer, senior developer role, Europe. Relocation package included. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for only a second. Then I typed, I'm accepting the position. I'm ready to relocate as soon as possible. I hit send. A few minutes later, I got a reply. They were thrilled. The offer was still open. Start date, 2 weeks. I stared at the screen until the words stopped looking real. Then I laughed once, quietly, sharply, the sound of disbelief turning into oxygen. By morning, my flight was booked. I didn't tell Daniel. I made coffee, answered emails, went to work, moved through the day with a calmness so complete it almost frightened me. That evening, while I was still at the office, he texted, "Why did you delete all our pictures?" I looked at the message and set my phone face down. A minute later, Avery? Then, what is this about? I didn't reply. He called twice, then 4 times. By the time I left work, the messages had multiplied. Stop ignoring me. Can we talk tonight? You're being ridiculous. That one almost made me smile. When I got home, he was pacing the living room. Avery, what the hell is going on? I set my bag down carefully. You said you needed space. That doesn't mean this. He gestured wildly, like absence itself had offended him. Deleting everything? Acting like I don't exist? I looked at him, really looked at him, and understood that he still believed this was temporary, that I would circle back, that I would remain in orbit while he figured out whether his ex-girlfriend was worth the risk. No, I said softly, it means exactly this. He stared at me, searching my face for softness, for fear, for the version of me he knew how to manage. He didn't find her. The next morning, I left before he woke up. I spent the next 2 weeks packing, signing documents, closing accounts, tying off every thread of the life I had built around him. He kept texting, at first confused, then annoyed, then frantic. Why are you acting like this? We said break, not breakup. At least talk to me. I answered none of it. On the day of my flight, while I sat at the gate with my carry-on at my feet and my passport in my hand, my phone lit up again. Why are you ignoring me? This time, I replied, not with words. I took a photo of my boarding pass and sent it. That was all. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the calls started, one after another, my screen flashing his name over and over like panic had finally found him. Final boarding was announced. I silenced my phone, stood up, and walked toward the gate. Not because I was trying to punish him, not because I wanted revenge, because for the first time in a very long time, I was choosing the life that did not require me to beg for basic respect. And somewhere behind me, in a city already beginning to feel like a previous version of myself, Daniel was finally realizing that I had not been bluffing. I had simply stopped waiting for him to value what he was so sure would stay. The first thing I noticed when I landed in Europe was the quiet, not silence. The city was alive in its own way. Cafes spilling onto sidewalks, conversations in languages I didn't understand. The low hum of trams gliding past old stone buildings that had been standing longer than anything I'd ever known. But inside me, it was quiet. No second guessing. No waiting for a phone to light up with a name I wasn't supposed to compete with. No rehearsing conversations in my head just to be heard. Just space. The apartment they set me up with was small, but it had a narrow balcony overlooking a river that caught the light in a way that made even ordinary mornings feel intentional. I stood there my first night, jet-lagged and wide awake, watching reflections ripple across the water. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Work helped. The projects were bigger, sharper, demanding in a way that pulled me fully into the present. I led a team that didn't know me as someone's girlfriend, someone's support system, someone who compromised. They knew me as the one in charge, and I didn't have to shrink to fit that. Still, healing wasn't instant. There were moments, evenings when the city softened and the sky turned a muted gold, when I'd find myself replaying his voice. You're so settled, so predictable. At first it stung, then slowly it changed shape. Predictable became consistent, settled became stable, and somewhere along the way I stopped seeing those words as flaws. Back home, the narrative was different. I didn't have to look for it, it came to me. A message from Tom, one of our mutual friends. You kind of disappeared on him, Avery. That's cold. Another from Emily. Daniel's really hurt. It was just a friendship. You didn't even give him a chance to explain. I read them both. Then I locked my phone and set it aside. It was almost impressive, the way the story had already been rewritten. I was the one who left, the one who overreacted, the one who couldn't handle something harmless. I thought about responding, explaining, laying out every detail like evidence in a case no one had asked me to argue. But then I realized anyone who needed that explanation had already chosen not to see. So I let the silence speak for me. Weeks passed, then months, and somewhere in that distance, the truth started surfacing on its own. It came in fragments at first. A message from someone I barely spoke to anymore. Hey, I don't know if you heard, but things with Daniel and Lena are messy. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity, quiet and detached, won. From what I pieced together, the harmless friendship hadn't stayed harmless for long, if it ever was. They'd gotten close quickly after I left, too quickly for it to be anything new. Late nights turned into mornings together. Catching up became staying over, and eventually, whatever lines had once existed disappeared entirely. It wasn't subtle. Not anymore. But the part that caught my attention wasn't the affair. It was what came after. Lena wasn't who he remembered. Or maybe she was exactly who she had always been. Adventurous, yes, but unstable. Restless. The kind of person who chased intensity, not stability. The same traits he used to describe her with a smile started showing up as problems. She borrowed money. At first small amounts, nothing dramatic. Then more. There was talk of a business idea, something vague, risky. He invested, helped, supported. I almost laughed when I read that part. The symmetry of it. Then came the arguments. Public this time. Posts that didn't name each other, but didn't need to. Some people pretend to be supportive until you need them. Don't trust someone who plays the victim when they're the problem. Friends started noticing, picking sides. And then, the breaking point. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't subtle. It was loud, messy, impossible to ignore. Lena posted first. A long rant, emotional, angry, unfiltered. She called him controlling, clingy. Said he couldn't handle who she really was. Then, hours later, he responded. Shorter, sharper, and far more damaging. He didn't just deny it. He exposed everything. That they had been involved before I left. That it wasn't just talking. That the lines had been crossed long before I ever asked him to set boundaries. I read that message twice. Not because I was shocked, but because seeing it confirmed changed something final inside me. There it was. The truth. Not twisted, not softened, not explained away. Just stated. After that, things unraveled quickly. He lost his job. Too many late arrivals. Too many distractions. Too many problems bleeding into everything else. Money became an issue. Apparently, the business idea had failed. Lena disappeared soon after. No closure, no conversation. Just gone. Exactly the way he had once told me she left him years ago. History repeating itself with brutal precision. His social media went quiet. Then sporadic. Then almost desperate. Quotes about betrayal, about loyalty, about realizing who was really there for you. I watched none of it directly. But pieces still found their way to me. Through overlapping connections. Shared platforms. The digital residue of a life I had stepped out of. And each time, I felt less. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just distance. Meanwhile, my life kept moving. Mornings turned into routines I actually enjoyed. Coffee on the balcony. The river catching early light. Messages from colleagues about projects that challenged me instead of draining me. I started going to the gym regularly. Not to escape anything. Just because I could. I signed up for language classes. Stumbled through conversations that made me laugh at myself instead of second-guess everything I said. And then, there was Marcus. He was introduced to me through a colleague. A designer. Thoughtful. Observant in a way that didn't feel intrusive. On our first coffee, he listened more than he spoke. And when he did speak, it wasn't to impress. It was to understand. There was no tension. No guessing. No invisible third presence in the room. Just ease. I didn't rush it. Didn't label it. But I noticed the difference. The absence of anxiety. The quiet consistency. The way I never once had to question whether I was competing with someone else's past. One evening, as we walked along the river, he asked me something simple. Do you miss home? I thought about it. About the apartment, the routines, the version of me that had lived there. Then I shook my head. No, I said. And I realized I meant it. Because what I had left behind wasn't home. It was a place where I had slowly learned to accept less than I deserved. And what I had found here wasn't just distance. It was clarity. The first time Daniel tried to reach me, it didn't come from his number. It came from his sister's. Hey, it's me. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I locked my phone and set it down. I didn't respond. At first it was just that. A message every few days, then every day. Then multiple times a day. Different numbers, different tones. I miss you. I made a mistake. Lena meant nothing. That one almost felt like a joke. Then came the voicemails. His voice softer than I remembered, slower, careful, like he was choosing each word to sound like regret instead of panic. I didn't realize what I had until you were gone. I thought I needed space. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I'm not okay, Avery. I listened to one. Just one. Then I deleted the rest without opening them. Because I already understood something he was only just starting to feel. Absence hits harder when you're the one who thought it wouldn't matter. When the messages didn't work, the pressure changed direction. Emily emailed me. You're being a little harsh. He's going through a lot. Tom tried calling. Come on, Avery. At least hear him out. He's not doing well. I almost admired the consistency. The way concern always seemed to flow toward the person who broke things, never the one who quietly held everything together until it wasn't worth holding anymore. Then came the late night call. 2:07 a.m. I don't know why I answered. Maybe curiosity. Maybe closure. Maybe I just wanted to hear how far he had fallen. Avery? His voice cracked the second I said hello. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then it all came out. Messy, unfiltered, real. I messed up, he said. I thought I could handle it. Lena, she wasn't who I thought she was. She took everything. Money, time, everything. I leaned back against my chair, staring out at the river beyond the glass. And now? I asked. I see it now, he rushed. You, us, what we had. I was stupid, I was selfish. But we can fix it. I'll come there, I'll start over, I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. The same man who couldn't even set a boundary, now offering everything. You asked me to trust you, I said calmly, even when it made me uncomfortable. I know, and I was wrong. You told me if I loved you, I'd accept your friendship with her. Silence, then quieter. I didn't understand what I was risking. No, I said, you didn't. There was a pause. Then his voice shifted, just slightly. But you didn't have to leave like that, he said. You didn't even give me a chance to fix it. You just disappeared. I almost smiled. Even now, there it was. That need to rewrite things just enough to share the blame. I didn't disappear, I said evenly. I stepped away. That's not fair. No, I cut in gently. What wasn't fair was asking me to stay while you made room for someone else. He exhaled sharply, like the truth physically hurt to hear. But we had history, he said, softer now. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I looked at my reflection in the dark window. For a second, I saw the version of me who would have hesitated, the one who would have softened, who would have tried one more time just to prove that love could survive effort alone. She was your history too, I said, and you chose her. I didn't choose her, he insisted quickly. You didn't choose me, I corrected. That was the difference. The line went quiet. When he spoke again, the desperation was clearer. I can change, he said. I'll block her. I'll block everyone if I have to. Just don't do this. Don't throw us away. The irony settled in slowly, heavy, precise. He was offering me now the very thing he once refused. Too late. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. I already left it behind. Avery, I've moved on. The words landed clean. Final. You don't mean that. I do. Another silence. Longer this time. Then, quietly. Is there someone else? I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know, but because I realized something in that moment. He wasn't asking out of love. He was asking to measure how replaceable he had become. Yes, I said. The reaction was immediate. Sharp inhale, a shift in breathing. You replaced me that fast? No, I said calmly. I found something you never gave me. And what's that? His voice edged, slipping toward something bitter. Peace. The word hung there between us. Unarguable, unreachable. That's not fair, he said again, but this time it sounded weaker. After everything, I repeated softly. I chose myself. That was the part he still didn't understand, because to him, love had always meant access. Availability. The assumption that I would still be there, even while he tested the limits of how far he could drift. I don't need closure, I continued. I don't need explanations. I already saw what I needed to see. Avery, please. You made your choice, I said. Now I've made mine. I ended the call before he could say anything else, and this time I didn't feel anything after. No shaking hands, no second thoughts. Just stillness. A few weeks later, I saw him again. Not in person, on a screen. Lisa's wedding. A small virtual ceremony, scattered across time zones. I joined from my balcony, the evening light soft behind me, Marcus moving quietly in the kitchen just out of frame. The call filled with familiar faces, laughter, small talk, fragments of a life I used to belong to. And then Daniel appeared, uninvited from what I could tell. For a moment, no one said anything. But the contrast was undeniable. He looked different, tired, worn down in a way that went deeper than just appearance. His background was cluttered, dim, temporary. His eyes found mine almost instantly. I held the gaze. Not cold, not angry, just distant. After the ceremony, messages started popping up in the chat. Congratulations. Jokes. Plans. I typed something simple. Congrats, Lisa. Life's been good over here. New projects, new adventures, with my boyfriend. I didn't need to say more. Seconds later, a private message appeared. Daniel, we need to talk, please. Then another. Just 5 minutes, please. I watched the notifications stack. Then, against my better judgment, or maybe because I wanted to see how this ended, I accepted the breakout room request. His face filled the screen. Closer now. More real. More undone. I can't believe this, he said, voice unsteady. You've already moved on like I meant nothing. I leaned back, calm. You said you needed space, I replied. I found something better. He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. You don't understand what I've been through, he said. Lena, she ruined everything. I lost my job, my savings. I'm staying with my sister. I have nothing left. The words poured out like they were meant to earn something. Sympathy. Access. Another chance. But all I heard was consequence. I'm sorry that happened, I said. And I meant it. Just not in the way he wanted. But that's not my responsibility. His expression broke. I need you, he said, quieter now. You always knew how to fix things. There it was. The truth beneath everything. Not love. Need. Dependence. I'm not that person anymore, I said. You are, he insisted. You're pretending not to be. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. I finally stopped pretending that I was. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, unavoidable. Then, one last attempt. Desperate, fragile. I love you. The words came too late to carry any weight. I held his gaze for a second longer. Then I said simply, that's not enough. And I left the room. No hesitation. No looking back. Just a clean exit. When I returned to the main call, Marcus glanced over at me from the kitchen, a quiet question in his eyes. I smiled. Soft, certain. Because for the first time in a long time, there was nothing unfinished behind me.